Novus, the new voice. Vox Novus, the new dimension. Vox Novus, thought and movement leaders who will share from their experience and offer tools to help us navigate our rapidly changing world. My name is Victor Fuhrman. Welcome to Vox Novus, the new voice. Hashimoto's is a disease where the immune system attacks your thyroid, but the medical community either can't diagnose it, will tell you it's just stress, or are treating the symptoms instead of addressing the underlying reasons your immune system is haywire. My guest this week on Vox Novus, Dr. Gil Kajiki, is the nation's leading expert in non-drug management of hypothyroidism, low thyroid, and Hashimoto's disease, and founder of the Valley Thyroid Institute, a worldwide center. He joins me this week to discuss his pioneering work and book, Sick, Tired, Untreated, and Abandoned: How the Medical Community Fails Hashimoto's Patients and How You Can Get Your Life Back. Please join me in welcoming to Vox Novus Dr. Gil Kajiki.
Thank you so much, Victor. Good to be on your show.
Thank you. Dr. Gil, please share with us your path and how it led to your calling prior to your interest in the thyroid.
Well, to make it as short as possible, I've been a chiropractor for 36 years. And my first probably 10 or 12 years, I was just strictly musculoskeletal. I treated headaches and back pain and neck pain. And then my wife started coming down with all these symptoms of what we thought was low thyroid or Epstein-Barr. And it turned out to be Hashimoto's. And the doctors wanted to treat her with thyroid medication. And I just didn't understand why they wanted to treat an immune system problem with a thyroid medication. And when the doctor told me that's the way we do it, that was a sign to me that they were not going to help her, and I had to get this figured out on my own. So I went on a search to get my wife resolved or into remission of Hashimoto's, and I did that with the help of some friends of mine and colleagues and seminars and books and online webinars. And after about 18 months, I got her completely into remission from her Hashimoto's, all naturally with no medication. And that was my journey into going into functional medicine and kind of phasing out of this musculoskeletal chiropractic. And we developed a protocol that we could treat anyone in the world from any place, as long as they have a phone signal and they can get delivery of packages. We can treat anybody in the world.
You must have felt horrible when you saw your wife suffering and the doctors were giving her nothing but bad answers.
Yeah, I did feel horrible. I mean, I felt more, what's the word? You're just helpless. There's nothing I could do. I was great at fixing people's spines, but I didn't know what to do about this Hashimoto's. And so I had to get this figured out.
Let's start with the basics. First of all, how common are thyroid problems?
Well, in women, it's about 9 out of 10 women get this thyroid condition, and probably the ages of about 40 to 65. A lot of women get this, and it's very hard to diagnose.
Does this affect men as well?
Very seldomly. I mean, only 1 out of 10 men seem to get a low thyroid condition.
And what are some of the common signs that someone has a thyroid problem?
Well, the women typically will say things like, I've gained this weight all of a sudden, and I can't seem to drop it. I feel sluggish, slow, depressed. I can't sleep at night. I have digestive problems. I may have anxiety and depression. I may have constipation and diarrhea. And just seems to be this whole myriad of different symptoms of what they think may be a thyroid problem.
And how does one differentiate between a thyroid-based problem and something else?
Well, the only way you can know is to do a full thyroid panel. And When I say full, I do 10 different thyroid tests. Conventional medicine will typically do only 2. They'll do TSH, free T4, maybe free T3, because that's all they need in order to prescribe medication. But if you really want to find out if you have a thyroid problem, you need to do all 10 of these thyroid tests.
And just explain what that T3 and T4 mean.
Well, the T4 is your inactive thyroid hormone. So your thyroid gland produces this T4 hormone, and about 93% of it is T4. And this is an inactive thyroid hormone. About 7% of that thyroid hormone is T3, which is an active thyroid hormone. So there isn't enough active thyroid hormone in order for that thyroid to function properly. So then what happens is the body has to convert this T4 inactive into a T3 active. And a lot of that conversion occurs in the liver and in the gastrointestinal tract. So if you've got some liver issues or some gastrointestinal issues, you could have this conversion problem, and it may not even be a thyroid problem. It might be a conversion problem. But the way you diagnose a hyposlow is your T4 is decreased or suppressed, and your TSH is high. And your TSH is not a thyroid problem. It's your pituitary gland telling your thyroid, hey, I want you to speed up. You're too slow. That's what thyroid stimulating hormone means. So a high TSH is a sign that there's some kind of a pituitary to thyroid communication problem. A low T4 tells you there's actually a thyroid problem.
And why is it that conventional medicine only does 2 tests and doesn't do what you do with 10 tests?
Well, this is my opinion, and after doing this for 14 years, I can tell you that if you get your opinions from conventional medicine and you go to the endocrinologist, the GPs, the MDs, the PCPs, you use your insurance, you pay a small copay, you just have to understand and accept the fact that they are influenced by the pharmaceutical and the insurance companies. So they are only going to do what the insurance company approves, which is medication or surgery, and they're only going to do what the pharmaceutical companies approve. And because there is no medication for Hashimoto's, which my wife had, they're always going to treat the thyroid anyways. So they only need to do 2 or 3 tests to rationalize giving medication. Because they don't treat naturally, because they don't really look for the root cause, they don't need to do more than 2 tests, and the insurance company is not going to approve doing more than those 2 tests.
Now, here's another opinion question. Do you think that if men had an equal number of conditions similar to women, there would be a difference?
You know, I'd have to say there is going to be a difference. I don't know how there would be a difference, but I would have to say yes. Somehow or another, there would be different outcomes. There would be different approved protocols for treating thyroid.
So there is a bias in this.
Well, I don't know that there's a bias. I mean, there just is something about thyroid problems where 90% of it is women. I don't know why that is. I mean, I have some theories about it, but I don't know statistically or scientifically why that is. But so I don't think it's a bias. I think that's just kind of the way it is with healthcare.
Now, what are the conditions that you refer to as triggers?
So I refer to triggers as body dysfunctions that agitate the immune system, and that's the reason why that immune system attacks the thyroid. So in Hashimoto's, this is an immune system problem more than the thyroid problem. And my focus is about finding out why is your own immune system attacking your own thyroid? And it's because of these triggers. So there are 9 very common triggers that I look for and treat. It's not all of them, but it's the 9 most common. So I look for anemias, blood sugar instability, adrenal gland dysfunction, hormone imbalance, inflammation, gastrointestinal problems, food sensitivities, chemical sensitivities, and hidden infections. So I look for these over and above the thyroid issue. Now, these same triggers, though, these same triggers are also body dysfunctions that very closely mimic a thyroid problem, but isn't a thyroid problem. So these 9 triggers that I just mentioned, they look like a thyroid problem, act like a thyroid problem, feel like a thyroid problem, have the same symptoms as a thyroid problem, but it's not a thyroid problem, it's a trigger. So most of my patients, they do have a thyroid problem, they have a Hashimoto's autoimmune problem, and they have the triggers all going on at the same time. And their doctors are trying to treat them with a thyroid medication. No wonder they're still feeling lousy and it's not working.
Tell us about how Hashimoto's manifests.
Well, it really manifests as low thyroid function because 90% of the low thyroid conditions are Hashimoto's in nature. So it typically starts off with these symptoms of low thyroid. So women, very seldomly men though, they start feeling depressed, weight gain, digestive issues, insomnia, depression, and they can't figure out what it is. And finally, their doctor decides to test this thyroid panel, and maybe it shows a low thyroid function, maybe not. But if that low thyroid function continues long enough, about 80% of those cases of low thyroid function then turn into an autoimmune Hashimoto's condition. And now you've got a more complicated problem. Now you've got an immune system problem attacking your own thyroid. So now you've got kind of double trouble here.
In your work, how do you differentiate between the Hashimoto's and a basic thyroid condition?
Well, the only way to really know if you have Hashimoto's is to do the Hashimoto's antibodies test. And that's a very simple blood test. There's 2 tests. I found many times if the patient can manage to convince their doctor to do the Hashimoto's test, they typically only do one of the 2, and so they miss the Hashimoto's. But you have to do a blood test called thyroid peroxidase, called TPO, and the other one is called antithyroid globulin antibodies. So if either of those are elevated, that is an autoimmune Hashimoto's condition. Now, what you have to be careful about, though, is you can't just go by the lab test. You have to be a doctor here, too, and you have to match the patient's symptoms with the patient lab results. So because antibodies fluctuate, they do go up and down and up and down. You might catch it at the time that it's down, and you might suspect Hashimoto's, but the Hashimoto's antibodies are negative. And you may redo them a month from now, and they may be positive. So you can't just always go by the lab test. You have to go by what the patient's symptoms are. And what I have found in conventional medicine is that they are only concerned about the lab test markers, not necessarily the patient's symptoms. So if the lab tests look normal and you feel lousy, they tell you, go away, your lab tests are normal. But I will tell your listeners this is one of the most valuable things they can hear. There's no way, I repeat, there is no way your lab test can be normal and you still have symptoms. So those doctors, they're either doing the wrong tests, not doing enough of them, or reading them wrong, likely all 3. And as we mentioned before, if you're going through the insurance model, they are not going to approve all the testing for the triggers. They are not going to approve all the 10 thyroid tests. So you're going to be stuck if you continue to go through conventional medicine searching out if you have a Hashimoto's or a thyroid problem or a trigger problem.
And the mechanism that causes Hashimoto's is not something that can be easily seen. Is that what it is?
Yeah, and that's even up for debate right now. Is that it seems like it's this perfect storm of genetic disposition, some kind of an environmental trigger, and some kind of digestive problem. Now, that environmental trigger, that could be stress. It could be emotional, psychological stress. It can be an auto accident. It could be an Epstein-Barr infection. It can be a chemical exposure. I mean, there's just so many things. When I say environmental, I'm talking about coming from the outside going in. But it's this perfect storm of genetic disposition, environmental trigger, and digestive dysfunction, because 80% of your immune system is housed in your gut. So if you've got some gut issues and you've got a genetic disposition and you have this environmental trigger, it seems to be this perfect storm for activating autoimmunity.
We think about when we hear autoimmune conditions, we think about things like rheumatoid arthritis and psoriasis and things of that nature. Is there any difference between the way this operates and those do?
I would say there's a difference, sure, but I think that's more theoretical. If we're talking about just on a practical level, rheumatoid arthritis is when your own immune system attacks your joints. Type 1 diabetes is when your own immune system attacks your beta cells of your pancreas. Vitiligo is when your own immune system attacks your pigmentation cells. So really, the mechanism is your own immune system is attacking these body parts. I mean, that's the same for all autoimmunity. How they start, what the cellular mechanism is, what the triggers are, that's what differs from one person to another.
So you take on a new patient and they're giving you their symptoms and you run your panel. How do you determine the best course of treatment?
Well, I match the patient's symptom to the history to the lab test results. So my patient history is very critical. I've got a 19-page intake report form, and I actually read it. It bothers me when I go to doctors, they have me fill out all these forms and then they don't even read it. They just ask me all the questions. I actually read it. So before I even talk to my patient, I kind of have a good idea what's going on. So I take those symptoms, I take their history, I look at their lab test markers, I see which of the triggers did I find from those lab test markers. I then start to prioritize those lab test markers because I want the patient's symptom to match the lab result, to match the history. And when I find those triggers that make those matches, I prioritize them. Now I know the root cause of the problem. At that point, I can start creating natural protocols with vitamins, herbs, minerals, enzymes, amino acids, detoxes, de-inflammatory eating plans, lifestyle changes that is very personalized and customized to that particular Hashimoto's patient.
Now, you obviously are advocating that natural treatment is better than synthetic thyroid hormone medication, correct?
Not necessarily, no. I wouldn't say that I do that. If you need medication, you need it. If you waited so long with this Hashimoto's condition, or you just couldn't find the right physician to treat you, and your immune system has been attacking your thyroid, it may have been doing that for so long that it destroyed so much thyroid tissue that you need thyroid medication. So I am not a medication hater. If you need it, you need it. But it's when you don't need it or it's not working that we have to look for other means. And because I don't prescribe medication, my course of action is a natural protocol, even using natural thyroid support supplements. But I do not at all say that natural is better than prescription medication.
So someone presents to you and you determine through the battery of tests that it is Hashimoto's. What's the next course of action for you?
Well, we want to find out what their main trigger is. Is it anemia? Is it blood sugar instability? Is it inflammation? But typically with Hashimoto's, the first thing we want to do is we want to squelch this inflammatory protein called NF-kappa beta. And what we found is that this NF-kappa beta protein gets activated in these autoimmunity patients. This starts causing widespread systemic inflammation. And inflammation is the seed to all disease. There is no condition out there that exists without inflammation as a perpetuator or initiator to that condition. So that NF-kappa beta protein causes this systemic inflammation. The inflammation activates the protein causes inflammation, the inflammation activates the protein, and you have this vicious cycle of protein activation inflammation. There are no known drugs to break that cycle, but there are some very well-established, well-researched natural herbal compounds shown in the literature to break that inflammatory cycle. So when I confirm that I have an autoimmune patient like Hashimoto's or rheumatoid arthritis, the very first thing I will do is squelch that NF-kB protein complex with natural herbal compounds, and specific dietary changes.
Obviously, each patient needs their own specific recommendations, but is there a specific supplement for Hashimoto's?
No, there is not. And you're right. Everyone is different. Every Hashimoto's case is different. And that's something that kind of frustrates patients is I get these phone calls where they want to know, what do I do? What do I take? What kind of diet do I have? What do I eat? And I tell them every case is different. Okay. You don't want some generalized cookie cutter protocol. You want something specific for your Hashimoto's condition. So we have to take a history. We have to see what kind of symptoms you have. We have to do some lab testing. We have to discover the triggers. We have to prioritize the triggers. Then at that point, we can start some kind of a plan of action and recommendations. And only at that point will I know how much a treatment protocol costs, what kind of supplements you need to take. I don't know any of that information until I do that evaluation.
My guest is Dr. Gil Kajiki. His book, Sick, Tired, Untreated, and Abandoned, How the Medical Community Fails Hashimoto's Patients and How You Can Get Your Life Back. Dr. Gil, please tell our listeners where they can get your book and find out more about you and your work.
The best place to go is go to my website, and it is www.drkajiki.com. It's www.drkajiki.com. You can go there and get the Amazon link to buy the book. You can download some streaming videos about all the thyroid dysfunctions, and you can also schedule a consultation with me.
We'll be back with more of Dr. Gil after these words on the OMTimes Radio Network.
The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
And we're live here outside the Perez family home, just waiting for the... And there they go! Almost on time this morning. Mom is coming out the front door strong with a double-arm kid carry. Looks like Dad has the bags. Daughter is bringing up the rear. Oh, but the diaper bag wasn't closed. Diapers and toys are everywhere. Ooh, but Mom has just nailed the perfect car seat buckle for the toddler. And now the eldest daughter, who looks to be about 9 or 10, has secured herself in the booster seat. Dad zips the bag closed, and they're off. But looks like Mom doesn't realize her coffee cup is still on the roof of the car. And there it goes. Oh, that's a shame. That mug was a fam favorite.
Don't sweat the small stuff. Just nail the big stuff, like making sure your kids are buckled correctly in the right seat for their age and size. Learn more at nhtsa.gov/the right seat.
Visit nhtsa.gov/the right seat.
Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Back on Vox Novus, my guest this week is Dr. Gil Kajiki. His book, Sick, Tired, Untreated, and Abandoned, How the Medical Community Fails Hashimoto's Patients and How You Can Get Your Life Back. Dr. Gil, can someone permanently get off thyroid medication?
I believe it's possible, but it really takes a lot of management, and it takes consistent lab testing, and it could take years. And unfortunately, most patients are either unable or willing to be under management of a physician or professional for that long a period of time, because it's not just a matter of decreasing the medication, getting off of it. You have to figure out what these triggers are. You have to calm down the autoimmune activity. You have to get the triggers resolved. You have to make sure that that thyroid gland, in fact, does need that medication. And then you could start that process of maybe decreasing or minimizing their medication to the point to where maybe they don't need it. Now, it's been done a few times with some of my patients, but it's not something that's going to happen in 4 or 6 months.
You had mentioned one of the triggers being stress. Do you recommend stress reduction, such as meditation?
I do recommend different types of lifestyle changes to help with their autoimmunity, but because that's not my forte, I defer any kind of psychological, emotional, or spiritual work to other professionals such as yourself that do that as their primary focus for their type of treatment that they give the patients. So I recognize when people need it. I recognize the need for it, but I don't do that type of lifestyle changes or enhancements for people, and I will help them find someone, or I will recommend that they go find somebody.
What type of patients are the best candidates for your treatment?
Gosh, the best ones. Well, I think they have to be willing to make some changes, number one. They have to be really just to the point to where they're just sick and tired of being sick and tired. And they have to be open to different methods that they haven't done before. If you keep doing the same thing you've always done, you're likely to get the same results. So when I consult with people, I tell them what I'm telling you here should sound different than what these other doctors have told you. So you have to be open to that change. You have to be open to modifying your diet. You have to be open to changing some lifestyle habits that you may have had that are impeding your progress here. And you have to be open to the fact that your insurance company is not going to take care of this. This is a personal responsibility where you are going to have to take care of it. Your insurance company is not going to do that for you.
You say responsibility, so you're talking about also a commitment to following the protocol.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. You have to have this commitment. And I don't know what people's commitment level is when I first start, but I give everyone the benefit of the doubt, and I'm very open, but I soon find out within probably 6 to 8 weeks, how committed that person is. When I do my follow-up consultation with them, every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks or 6 weeks, however I do that with them, when I get excuses, when I get reasons why they didn't do something or didn't make a change, that's when we have to start deciding if this is a good fit or not.
Absolutely. What is involved in the treatment of people with non-Hashimoto's low thyroid?
Well, the first thing that I want to rule out is do you have a thyroid problem that requires medication? And that can oftentimes happen before even our first consultation. So, because if that person has a thyroid problem and somebody has run all the tests and they need medication, I am not the right person. They need to get on some medication. Now, if they refuse to take the medication but they acknowledge they need it and they want to look at natural methods, then that's something that we can work with. But if they need medication based on the lab results, I am obligated legally to tell them, you need to go get some medication and get this medical condition taken care of first, then come back to me and we could take care of the triggers. So it's a matter of ruling out, is it a thyroid issue or not? Does it require medication or not? And at that point, we could start working on the triggers, identifying the triggers, figuring out the priority of the triggers.
And in the first segment, and just now you alluded to the all-natural protocol. Give us an example of some of that.
Well, an all-natural protocol implies that there's no medication necessary for this person to feel better and get their symptoms resolved. Many patients come to me taking medication and they still have all of these thyroid symptoms. And what I've come to find out is that when these patients are taking their medication and they're not getting any symptomatic relief from it, and I test for these triggers, I have found that the triggers are the issue more often than not. And so when I identify these triggers and start these natural protocols, I make some dietary changes. I'll maybe do like a de-inflammatory eating protocol. I'll figure out which of the triggers do I need to address in priority? Do I need to go after the inflammation first? Do I need to go after the adrenals first? Do I need to go after the anemia first? Do I need to go after the infection first? And then based on what trigger I find in the priority, I start with these natural herbal compounds or vitamin or mineral. And then that's the all natural protocol, is non-drug type of treatment that I do.
You talk about inflammation, and many people have preconceived notions about what inflammation actually is. And when you think about inflammation, you think about on fire, something that's inflamed. Tell us a little about inflammation.
Yeah, inflammation's kind of this hidden enemy. And really, from a patient's perspective, it's very difficult to recognize inflammation. Like you may recognize inflammation because you feel swollen or you look swollen or it looks red or pink when it's not supposed to be. But inflammation in the brain could be something like depression, where it suppresses the brain function. It could be bloating in your digestive tract. That's inflammation. It could be diarrhea. That's inflammation in your digestive tract. It could be fatigue, because inflammation will slow down that body function. So it is very difficult just to say, yes, you have inflammation and you don't. And that's the reason why I rely on these lab markers so much, because I run these inflammation markers and you as the patient can actually see, oh, there's a marker for inflammation. No wonder I feel this way. And we actually now have a before and after test that we can say, hey, do you feel better, as well as has your inflammation decreased on the lab testing?
What are some of the causes of inflammation other than the autoimmune conditions?
Well, I mentioned those 9 triggers: anemia, blood sugar instability, adrenal dysfunction, hormone imbalance, inflammation, gastrointestinal problems, food sensitivities, chemical sensitivities, hidden infections. If left untreated long enough, all of those triggers will eventually cause fatigue as a side effect. And all those triggers cause fatigue. So fatigue is one of the most common symptoms that patients have complaints of. And they say, what do I take for my fatigue? I don't know. Is fatigue coming from your anemia? Is it coming from your inflammation? Is it coming from your adrenal glands? I mean, where is it coming from? We don't know. But I can tell you that food is one of the most common causes of inflammation. One of the most common causes is food. And people really, I guess, I don't know what you need to eat for your particular condition, but here's what I will tell you is that for all of you who are thinking you have food sensitivities or you're having these digestive symptoms or fatigue or brain fog or gut issues, change your diet and start with don't eat the things you know you shouldn't eat. Just use your common sense. That's where you start. Because when I go through people's diet and they have on there, I eat crackers, I eat pizza, I eat Cheetos, and they say, but I only have it 2 or 3 times a week. Don't have it at all and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you start with your common sense. I mean, people intuitively know what they should and shouldn't eat. And so stop the things you know you shouldn't eat. And when you think you've got a diet that is pretty perfect for you, but you're still having problems, that's when you contact me.
A lot of people will say, I eat breads and I feel sick, or I eat dairy and I feel sick. It's common sense that if you're eating it and you feel sick, stop eating it, right?
Exactly. I mean, not a lot of people understand gluten. I get it. But like you said, Victor, if you eat dairy and you don't feel good, stop it. If you eat cheesecake and you don't feel good, stop it. It's really that simple. I mean, that's a lot less expensive and a lot faster than trying to get a consultation with me and have me troubleshoot your diet.
Absolutely. The old story, I'm banging my head against the wall and my head hurts. Stop banging your head against the wall. It's just
right.
Kind of common sense. What is your success rate with your cases?
I would say of all the cases that I accept, I'm probably in the high 90s, about 98, 99% success.
That's wonderful. What kind of results can someone expect to see with your protocols?
Well, patients typically, and I'm going to say 99% of the people, patients typically come to me because they have symptoms that can't get resolved. Depression, digestive issues, insomnia, hot flashes, whatever it is, it's a symptom. So my first goal is to get that patient feeling better. And then secondarily, I want to get the lab markers to look better. Because if I get the lab markers looking great, but they still feel lousy, I have a failed case. So my success rate is based on how does that patient respond? And about 98 to 99% of the people, they tell me I have exceeded their expectations for how good they're going to feel.
And as we talked about before, your patients can continue working with their medical doctors as well, correct?
Absolutely. I do not want them to stop that relationship, particularly if they need medication, because I don't prescribe medication. If you need medication, don't stop that relationship. I will guide you through what you do and what you don't need. But if you need medication, you need somebody with that prescription pad to continue to prescribe that to you until we decide that you do or don't need that.
Do you ever communicate with their doctors?
No, I don't. And you know what? That's a really sad point, because I've treated thousands of people over the past 14 years, and almost every person has a medical doctor that they have worked with before they contacted me. And you would think that after so many failures with this patient, so many years, and the patient comes back to them raving how great they feel, you would think that that doctor would say, who is this guy? What did he do? I want to speak with him. I want to find out what he did to get you feeling better that I couldn't do. Not one time have I ever gotten contacted by their doctor to ask, what have I done to get this patient feeling better than they couldn't?
That's really sad.
It is really sad, because I want to believe that they're good people. I want to believe that they want to help that patient. But when not one doctor in 14 years has ever contacted me back to ask me, what did I do for this patient? I have to kind of question, how much do they really care?
My guest is Dr. Gil Kajiki. His book, Sick, Tired, Untreated, and Abandoned: How the Medical Community Fails Hashimoto's Patients and How You Can Get Your Life Back. Dr. Gil, please tell our listeners where they can get your book and find out more about you and your work.
The best place you can go is to my website, and my website is www.drkajiki.com. That's drkajiki.com. You can go there to hear the story about my wife and how I learned to get into Hashimoto's. You can purchase my book through an Amazon link there. You can buy some thyroid video series, and you can also schedule a consultation and just get right to it and find out what the problem is.
And what does that initial consultation cost?
It's a $97 consultation for 30 minutes.
Well, that's wonderful. That's extremely reasonable for all you're bringing.
Yeah, we want to break down the initial financial barriers.
That's wonderful. That's very generous of you. Thank you. That's really true. We talk about providing great care, and I think that's exactly what you're doing. So thank you for doing that.
I appreciate that, Victor. Thank you.
And we'll be back with more after these words on the OMTimes Radio Network.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free, ascendinghearts.com.
Hi, we're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that we can give our daughters everything they need to grow and learn. But not every child can focus on classes and play dates.
Nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. face hunger. That's 1 in 6. School lunch might be their only meal each day, and it's heartbreaking to imagine any child going to bed hungry. We're dreaming of a perfect day when kids can smile, play, and just be kids without worrying about where their next meal will come from. Feeding America is working to make that perfect day a reality.
Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste. That food is given to families and children in need. Being a kid should be about doing things that make an ordinary day extraordinary. Learning to play an instrument, building a sandcastle, hosting tea parties. Hunger should never be an obstacle to growing up.
You can help end childhood hunger in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Look out, world, we're getting strong. The future's here and we belong. She can STEM, she can do more. Like build a rocket and watch it soar. Or clean the oceans and make the world a better place. Find a cure, invent something new. There's no challenge in the world that she can't face. She can STEM.
Learn more at She Can STEM. A message brought to you by the Ad Council.
Mama, what does the chicken say?
Chicken. Oh, okay.
When the wolf?
Oh, a wolf. Ooh!
What about the tiny dog? Cat? Owl?
Ooh.
Dolphin? What does the turkey say? Whale.
Yeah, whale sound.
Do the giraffe.
Giraffe, really? Okay. Giraffe.
You're not going to get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff, like making sure your kids are buckled correctly in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right.
Visit NHTSA.gov/
the right seat.
Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
My name is Victor Fuhrman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting. A teenager. Learning the lingo.
Today I'm going to help parents translate teen slang. Now, when a teen says something is on fleek, it's exactly like saying, that's rad. It simply means that something is awesome or cool. Another one is totes. It's exactly like saying, totally, just shorter. As in, I totes love going to the mall with Becca. Another word you might hear is jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Back on Vox Novus, my guest this week is Dr. Gil Kajiki. His book, Sick, Tired, Untreated, and Abandoned, How the Medical Community Fails Hashimoto's Patients and How You Can Get Your Life Back. Dr. Gil, I understand you work with people all over the world. How do you do that?
Yes. I'd have to give some credit to this radio host who has a TV show. Her name is Lisa Garr. And Lisa Garr had me on her radio show one time, and she liked the interview, and she put me on her show called Gaia TV. Well, Gaia TV is international. And when they had aired that show of the interview with Lisa Garr and I internationally, I started getting phone calls and emails from people in Germany and France and England and New Zealand and Australia and Kazakhstan. And I thought, my gosh, I have to figure out how I'm going to work with these people. And I actually have a third-party supplement company in Europe. And I figured out that if they have a phone connection or an internet connection and they could get a delivery, I can work with anybody in the world, because everything that I do is information. I dispense information based on my experience and my academic education. I can troubleshoot anybody anywhere in the world. Unfortunately, I don't speak all languages, so they do have to speak English. But I do my Zoom consultations for anybody who's outside the United States. I do phone consultations for anybody in the United States. And 90% of my patient is in the United States, and about 10% is out there and internationally.
And just so that prospective patients will understand how you work, say I'm contacting you, I reach out to you, and I'm having an issue. I believe it's my thyroid. What do they? We do the consultation. What's the next step?
Yeah. Well, typically, we'll start with that $97 30-minute consultation, and that's an opportunity for you to ask me anything that you want and see if it's a good fit. To see if you're a good fit for me, to see if I'm a good fit for you. I mean, at that consultation, I might find out that you really do need to go to your endocrinologist, even though you don't want to. And right there, that's, where you should start. But if we decide at that point that we want to go a little further, then we'll do a more comprehensive consultation. we will do some lab work. Typically, we'll do either blood, stool, saliva, dried urine, hair, or breath. And that's our first step towards trying to figure out, do you have a thyroid problem? Are you appropriately medicated if you're taking medication? And which of the triggers you have? And that's really where things start to gel, to come together, is that initial comprehensive consultation, doing the lab test results. And then when I get a copy of the lab test results, I send them over to you as the patient. We review them together on the phone. We figure out which of the triggers you have, what type of triggers you have, what's the priority to go after those triggers. And at that point, I can create a plan of action and recommendations and let you know how long the proposed treatment plan is, what kinds of natural protocols we're going to do to go after those triggers, and how much that treatment plan costs. And then you can decide at that point if you want to start working with me or you just want to keep looking for another doctor.
And by the fact that there are labs all over the world, anywhere anyone has a lab near them, they can do these protocols, correct?
That's true. And some of the tests that I do are home testing kits. Like my saliva adrenal test is a home testing kit. My stool testing kit, where we look for infections and gastrointestinal dysfunction, that's a home stool testing kit. So we can do some of the tests at your own home. You don't even have to leave your home.
Wow. What is the trend you are seeing with your thyroid patients?
What are you referring to as the trend?
The trend in terms of responsiveness, and you had mentioned that your wonderful success rate. What are you hearing back from your patients?
Well, what they're discovering is that most of the time, it's not a thyroid problem. So it's these triggers. It's these triggers that look like a thyroid problem, act like a thyroid problem, feel like a thyroid problem, have the same symptoms as a thyroid problem, but it's not a thyroid problem. It's a trigger. And that's what they're discovering here, is that, my gosh, I really thought it was my thyroid, but my lab test came out normal. I'm taking my medication. I still feel lousy. And then I work with Dr. Kajiki. He identifies these triggers. He gives me some protocols for the triggers, and I start feeling better. So I think that's what my patients are realizing, is that, wow, it's a trigger problem, not necessarily a thyroid problem. And getting those triggers resolved will also help that autoimmune agitation from flaring up and calming down and attacking that thyroid.
What inspired your book?
You know, I've been out there for a while, and I know my title of my book is a little controversial, and I just didn't want to beat around the bush with it anymore. And I thought, you know what? People come to me because their medical physician or the person who they put all their faith into with their insurance, they failed them. And they didn't have any kind of resolution for them or suggestion for them. And they were literally abandoning them. They were just literally saying, look, your lab tests are normal, go away. And so that's what inspired the book title, is that I wanted to let people know that, look, I understand, I get it. You're being failed by the medical community, and that's the bottom line. But let's give you some resources to try to figure out how to get past this.
And what do you share for readers in your book?
What do I share for readers?
Yes, what do you offer readers in your book? What can they find?
Oh, well, I go over in detail what these triggers are. I mean, you have to understand what these triggers are. So I go over in detail what the triggers are. I go over in detail what Hashimoto's is and why medications aren't going to take care of that. I go over my background as, you know, how did I get into this, and you know, what was my wife's story and what was her role in me getting into Hashimoto's. And then I give you the next steps. And the next steps aren't about what do I do, what do I eat, what supplement do I take. The next steps are find somebody who can identify these triggers for you, because that's going to be the key, is identify the triggers. See if you actually have a thyroid problem or not. See if you need medication or not. So if you start there, you got to figure out what's wrong before you can figure out what to do.
In addition to your book, what information do you have on your website that people can find out?
Well, there is this streaming video series that you can purchase, I think, for like $37, and it's a series that I did with Lisa Garr, and it really educates you on all the different triggers. It tells you what each trigger is, what I do to test for it, how do I test for it, and what kind of role does it play in symptoms and what your overall health. So that's one thing that you can do is go to that streaming video series. This book is a wealth of information, but if you're looking for what to do, it doesn't tell you what to do. This is about what the next step is. How do I figure out who do I talk to or who do I see in order for me to figure out what to do next in terms of finding out what's wrong. You got to find out what's wrong first. Is it a trigger problem? Is it an autoimmune problem? Is it a thyroid problem? Does it need medication? Does it not? Or you could just get right to it. And you could purchase a 30-minute consultation with me for $97, and we could figure out right then and there if you're in the right place or not.
His book is called Sick, Tired, Untreated, and Abandoned: How the Medical Community Fails Hashimoto's Patients and How You Can Get Your Life Back. Dr. Gil, one more time, please tell our listeners where they can get your book and find out more about you and your work.
You would go to my website, which is www.drkajiki.com. That's drkajiki.com.
Thank you so much for joining us and sharing this message of hope for those who are suffering.
Thank you so much for the time, Victor.
And thank you for joining us on Vox Novus. I'm Victor, the Voice Fuhrman. Have a wonderful week.